This video is on natural resources and intangible assets. And so what we've looked at thus far was depreciating a property, plant, or equipment, which is a tangible asset. So if we have a natural resource, when we're looking at natural resources, we're looking at timber, oil, gas, fields, and basically our natural resources that we use, okay? And so for our cost determination on our natural resources, we want all the costs are going to include all costs necessary to acquire that natural resource and prepare it for use. So the cost, all that is included in the total cost of the asset. So all the costs necessary to drill the oil, get the property or land around the oil well ready to be drilled, and all that necessary expense to get it ready to extract the oil or to cut the timber, whatever the case may be. And then what we do is we deplete natural resources. Now, when we were looking at our property, plant, and equipment, we were depreciating this. But to allocate the cost of a natural resource, and I'll go back and fix that, we deplete it. It's called depletion. And we use the units of production method in order to calculate our depletion. Okay, our journal entry, similar to depreciation, but we changed the word. So we're going to debit depletion expense. So we're going to debit depletion expense, and we're going to credit accumulated depletion. So similar to our previous entry, but we use the words depletion. And so this depletion expense is going to be for the amount of natural resource that's mined, extracted, and sold. So that's what we're looking at. So that's our journal entry that's associated with that. And so let's look at an exercise, and I believe exercise 1018 in the book. They have an ore deposit that all the costs associated with it to get it ready is $3,721,000. And so they indicate no salvage value after we've completed all the ore out of it. And then so we want to divide it by, remember the units of production method, instead of dividing it by years, we divided how much we expect to produce out of there. And they indicate they expect to get 1,525,000 tons of ore out of that. And so that comes up with a depletion rate, excuse me, of 2.44. So I believe in the first year, they indicate that they mined 166,200 tons of ore. We multiply that times our 244, and we get a depletion rate of 405,528. And so that would be your first journal entry. And I'm just kind of going to copy this, since it takes me a little while to. And so what we would do is we would debit depletion expense for 405,528, and we would credit accumulated depletion for 405,528. So that would be your entry. And so the next year, so that was year one. The next year, let's say that they mined 200,000 tons of ore. We would take 200,000 and we would multiply it times 244. So my point is this 244 does not change. So that remains the same every year. It doesn't change. Okay, so that's depletion. I believe also in this problem they talked about a piece of machinery that they bought in order to do this. So when you're having assets that you are mining, using in this process, you also use the units of production method. So let's say we had this machine, and I believe they said it cost $213,500, no salvage value on it. And remember, they said we expect to get 1,525,000 tons of ore out of there. So we come up with a depreciation rate per unit for this asset to be 0.14. And so when we said in our first year we mined 166,200 tons of ore, we would multiply that times the 0.14, and you would get depreciation of 23,268. In doing so, your depreciation entry would be a debit to depreciation expense on this machine of 23,268, and we would credit accumulated depreciation on that machine of 23,268. So that's what we would do there. So we use the units per production method on our natural resources, and then also use the units of production method on the particular assets we are using to mine and operate these natural resources. Okay. Our last little piece is our intangible assets. Our intangible assets are things that we have in business, and these are like our patents, our copyrights, trademarks, those things that are essential to business operations, but they're not tangible. They're not a building or things like that. And so intangible assets, what we do with those, we write those off as well. And we write the cost of the asset over the life of the asset, and however long. If you have a patent on a 30-year patent, then we're going to do it over 30 years. And we use the straight line method. Sorry about that. We use the straight line method. And instead of depreciation or depletion, this is called amortization. So that is what we call it. And so our journal entry is similar. Our journal entry is similar in that we debit amortization expense and we credit accumulated amortization. So that would be our journal entry. And so we look at exercise, I believe 1019, and they purchased on January 1st some type of copyright. I'm not looking at the problem, but something like that. I'm not reading it to you. And so we would debit the asset because we got it for $118,000, and we would credit cash, assuming we paid cash for it. So we would do an entry to acquire. And I did not do that entry up there for that ore deposit, but we would have done a similar entry. Let me do that just real quick. When we bought that ore, paid whatever we had to for the land or whatever the case may be, we would have debited ore deposit, and we would have did that, I believe, for $3,721,000. And well, soon, but we don't know. However we paid for it, we would do that entry, and then we would write off the asset. So similar for our copyright. And so for our copyright, remember straight line. So if I have an asset, the rights to something that I get to have for the next 10 years, I'm going to take that 418 and divide it by the 10 years And so I get $41,800 of amortization each year. Now keep in mind that you could have partial years under the straight line method. In this case, they said we bought it on January the 1st, and so we would have full year depreciation on this one. And so I would debit on December 31st. Remember, these are adjusted entries. This depreciation, depletion, and amortization are all adjusted entries happening at the end of the year. So I would debit amortization expense, abbreviating, for $41,800, and I would credit accumulated amortization for $41,800. Of course, there's a lot more in the chapter. I'm trying to just cover the basics, and this is it. Take care.